A woman named Ruth, who is being released today after 20 years of prison for a serious crime. Actually, Ruth was accused of killing a police officer, but now because his sentence was fulfilled, so now she is going out of prison. Here she meets her parole officer Vincent, which warns her to some tasks that can take her back behind bars. Meanwhile, a young girl Catherine, sleeps while driving and falls victim to an accident. Her parents reach the hospital and decide to stay on the same until she is completely cured. On the other hand, when Ruth comes out of prison, a man here keeps an eye on him. This man's name is Keith, and when he came to know that Ruth is being released from prison, he follows him. On the way, Vincent talks about his job, and says that if you do not get any other employment, he can help him to get a simple job. Vincent leaves Ruth near a hostel in Chintown, where excluded people of the society live. She starts living with 3 disturbed neighbors, and she starts feeling more suffocated than the prison cell here. The boy chasing Ruth turned out to be the son of the police officer he killed. He comes to his elder brother Steve. He tells her about Ruth that she is released from prison today, so now we can avenge her father's death. But her brother Steve advises her to remain calm, because he believes that what Ruth did has been punished for him, so now he will not do anything that will upset his family. In the hospital, when Catherine regains consciousness, she sees her adopted father Michael and his daughter Emily standing beside her. The 3 of them talk here, and then after some time, Michael goes outside to meet his wife Rachel. Rachel suspects that Catherine's accident may have been due to stress. Michael learns that Ruth has also been released from prison on this day, so he begins to worry that she might come here looking for his sister Catherine, but the parents hope that she will not seek her relative, as she is forbidden to do so. At night, Ruth is called on the phone and she overhears a stranger accusing her of being a cop killer. On returning, she catches one of her neighbors breaking into her stuff. She immediately attacks the woman and forces her to leave the room, while recovering an old photo of Catherine. The next day, Ruth wakes up in her bunk bed and her mind drifts back to her past. In a flashback, the bank employees come to her house to take over the house. Luckily, a sheriff comes to pacify both sides, but in the end, he ends up dying at the house after someone killed him. Ruth then starts working at the fish packaging factory, and is placed in a room with her new co-workers. After returning from work, she goes to the public library to find information about her younger sister. Shortly after, she instead comes across an article reporting the sale of her old house, where all her memories with her sister took place there. So she decides to visit the house while experiencing her memories of Catherine on her journey. When she arrives at the house, she remembers the incident vividly as the sheriff offered her and Catherine shelter at his home. However, Ruth continued to turn down the offer, because she knew that Catherine would be taken from her. On the other side, her former home is now fully renovated and is occupied by John and Liz, along with their 2 sons. Liz notices Ruth outside and asks her husband to investigate Ruth, who is staring at their house. When John asks her if she is a neighbor, Ruth lies by saying that she did some work on the house. Because of this, he invites her inside to see the renovations, and introduces her to his family. Since she can no longer compose herself with all the memories in the house, Ruth leaves the house for no apparent reason. John, feeling sympathetic, offers her a ride to the bus stop. Along the way, they share stories about each other's lives. When John says he is a corporate lawyer, Ruth eventually tells the truth, that she was the previous owner of his house. She also tells him about her search for Catherine. After Ruth apologizes for lying, John feels bad for all that she has been through. Hence, he hands her his business card and says if Ruth needs his help, he will try to help her as best he can. Back to her parents' house, Catherine confesses to Emily that she secretly stopped taking her meds, and has been experiencing flashbacks ever since. Emily advises her to find out who the woman in her memories is. However, Catherine replies that she is now quite happy to live with Emily and her adoptive parents. Meanwhile, Ruth now works in 2 places. During the day, she works at a construction site, and at night, she works at the fish packaging factory. One day, Ruth tries to contact John continuously, but he never picks up the phone. It turns out that John finally learns the whole truth about her past. Because of this, Ruth leaves a voice message to John and pleads for his help, only wanting to meet Catherine's parents to know that her sister is okay. On the other hand, Liz asks her house contractor about Ruth's past. The contractor says that Ruth's father killed himself. As a result, the bank employees came to the house with a sheriff to evict the girls. Unexpectedly, Ruth ended up killing the sheriff, which leads to her being imprisoned afterward. When John comes home, his wife confronts him about all the information she knows about Ruth. She is worried about her family, that Ruth can harm her family at any time, because she once entered their house. John says that she was only asking for his help to find her sister, but Liz insists on John to refuse her request. While Ruth is working on a construction site, Steve disguises himself as a delivery man to have a quick talk with her. He intentionally mentions her parents, to which Ruth states that they're dead. After she leaves, Steve quietly goes through her belongings and discovers a photograph of Catherine. Other side, Steve meets Keith and finally agrees to take revenge against Ruth for ruining their family. At the same time, Ruth meets Vincent somewhere to make her report. He alludes to Ruth about her intention to seek a lawyer to find her sister. He also reminds her to stop her actions as she has lost custody of Catherine, or she can get into new trouble. Meanwhile, Michael receives a letter from John, who is now representing Ruth. After reading the letter, he calls his wife to discuss John's request to have a meeting with them. Michael initially believes that the two of them has legally adopted Catherine. Instead, Rachel thinks that they should meet with John to find out what Ruth really wants from them. Unbeknownst to them, Emily also overhears her parents talking about Ruth. At work, Ruth begins to open up and form a friendship with one of her coworkers, Blake. She then admits that she was recently released from prison for murdering a sheriff. Because of that, Blake is taken aback and his expression suddenly changes, making their lunch awkward. With that, Ruth quickly says goodbye and leaves Blake alone, feeling disappointed. Later, when she is just about to receive a call from John, a worker suddenly attacks her from behind after learning that Ruth was a cop killer. She does not retaliate at all but stares at Blake, who she suspects had leaked her secret earlier to the woman. After work, Ruth meets Vincent, who tells her a message from John that Catherine's parents want to see her, giving her some hope. Meanwhile, Ruth and John finally meet with Catherine's parents. During the meeting, she finds out that Michael and Rachel have purposely not told Catherine about her, and have withheld all the letters that she wrote to Catherine during her years in prison. They have decided what's best for Catherine is to not know or remember her at all. Ruth suffers an outburst of emotion and Catherine's parents angrily storm out of the room. In the end, Ruth can only say that she will not give up on finding her sister. John also warns her that they cannot do anything about it, because Catherine's parents have full custody of her sister. Furthermore, he warns her that she can go back to prison if she keeps insisting. Since she discovers that everyone is leaving the house, Emily searches for the letter which her parents mentioned the day before. As she reads them, Emily is moved by Ruth's words, and bursts into tears. After all the things she did to meet her sister failed, Ruth is very frustrated while ruining all the work she has made before. Sometime later, Blake approaches her to apologize for what he did. He then reveals that he had also recently been released from prison. On her way home, Ruth suddenly receives a call from Emily, saying that she has read all of her letters and wants to arrange a meeting with her. When Ruth wants to see Emily the next day, Steve stalks her and follows her from a distance. Emily meets Ruth in a botanical park while she recalls Catherine's childhood. At the end of their meeting, Emily informs her that Catherine will have a rehearsal at a local auditorium later that day. As a result, Ruth tries to call John to ask what he thinks about approaching Catherine later. Since John does not pick up her call, she rushes to his office only to find that John has gone out of town. As Emily returns home, Steve stalks her, thinking that Emily is Ruth's younger sister he has been looking for all along. After that, he returns home and comforts his crying baby. However, he also catches his brother in bed with his wife and beats him in anger. Motivated by anger, he heads to his mother's house to get his father's gun, and becomes more insistent on the idea of revenge. Soon, Ruth frantically makes her way to John's house, but she is instead approached by a furious Liz who tells her to leave. With no other choice, Ruth finally tells her what really happened the day the sheriff died. Through flashbacks, it is revealed that it was the 5-year-old Catherine who had actually fired the shot that killed the sheriff, but Ruth took the blame to protect her. Learning the truth, Liz feels sympathetic towards Ruth and drives her to the recital. Once there, she suddenly receives a phone call from Steve, who tells her that he has kidnapped Catherine, and threatens her to come to where they are, before he shoots her head. She then asks Liz to drive her to the location, while telling her that somebody has kidnapped Catherine. Because of this, Liz calls the authorities as Ruth goes inside. When Ruth meets Steve inside a storage room, she learns that the girl is actually Emily, who is begging for her life. At first, Steve announces his intention to kill the girl, but after Ruth expresses regret for what happened, he cannot bear it and bursts into tears. So, Ruth uses the opportunity to help Emily out of the room. Outside, the officers have arrived and immediately surround the storage room. Ruth then turns herself into the police, and Steve is also arrested while Emily is being rescued. At the recital, Michael and Rachel are very shocked after receiving a report that their daughter has just been kidnapped by Steve. A few moments later, Vincent also arrives at the scene, so Ruth is released into his custody. As Ruth begins to walk away with him, she notices that Emily's parents and Catherine have also come to the scene to pick up Emily. Catherine then walks slowly towards her and hugs her in the end, indicating that she has finally found the missing piece of her memories. Thanks so much for watching. Let us know your thoughts on the film in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and also watch some of our other videos. And before you go, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps.